Good morning, folks. This is Dr. Terry and Tom from the Metaphysical Mysteries podcast, most interesting part of your day. Today, we have with us Deb Frueh from the greater Chicagoland area, and she's got a fascinating story about the creation of and she's the founder of the Worldwide Metaphysical Tribe, and they have an upcoming, I guess I'll say, conference. And she's going to talk about that. And she's got 36 years in the tarot card business. And she has had the opportunity to have many well-known speakers come. And this thing started as just a backyard bonfire. And just so people know, bonfire means fire of bones. That's a definition. Or it can also be a celebration of things to come. I think that's probably where we're at in this case. So, Deb, welcome.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Fantastic. And somebody from my own state, that's unusual. It's a great state of Illinois.
Absolutely.
So anyway, Deb, tell us about yourself and how this backyard bonfire situation got going.
Well, let's go way back. People often ask me, how did I know I was psychic, or when did that start? And according to my mother, I've been this way my whole life. When I was just a little toddler, the phone would ring and I would say, it's grandma or whoever, but I thought everybody was like me because that's what kids think. And so it never occurred to me to, my 6-year-old mind was not thinking, I wonder if I can monetize this. I was just living my life and getting information that wasn't available. I didn't know it, but as I got older, I started to see that there was something going on here, and I had a huge urge to buy a tarot deck about 36 years ago. 36 years ago, there was no internet, there was no Amazon, there was no Barnes and Noble. If you wanted a tarot deck, you had to know where to get one. And I had never even seen a tarot card. So I had no idea where to start. And someone suggested to me that I go to this funky little shop called Platypus Books, which is gone now in Evanston, Illinois. And I walked in and they had 2 decks. And I said to the clerk, which one should I buy? And she said, well, this one over here on the left is the classic deck. So I bought it and I couldn't read that thing. I couldn't figure it out. It was 2 years of banging my head against the wall. And I went to a party and there was a tarot reader there. And instead of being in a separate room locked away, she was in the middle of the living room. So I thought, all right, let's see what this is all about, because I had never seen a tarot reading before. And I stood behind her and the client would ask a question and she'd do some cards. And it was like watching television. It was so crystal clear. And I realized afterwards that the difference here was the deck. This particular deck she was reading was based on Greek mythology, which I love Greek mythology. So, I understood it right away. The other deck was symbols that meant nothing to me. So I just dove in and I was surprised. I was really surprised at how well it flowed. And I did that for a long time, raised 4 kids and, all that good stuff. And then the pause came where the kids are grown and I'm thinking, what am I going to do with myself? I need to do something interesting. And let's face it, I like a party. And so I decided that I had been traveling. Now, I live about 2 hours west of Chicago. So whenever I wanted to see all my psychic friends, and I had gathered quite a few. Actually, funny that I should say that, because they were all connected with this center in Lombard, Illinois, called the Gathering Lighthouse. And I would drive in, and hang with everybody. And, well, I got tired of driving in there. And so I told them all that they were coming to my house for a bonfire. And it was, they came out at 4 p.m. We went out and had dinner together. I lit a bonfire. We did readings for each other. The Perseid meteor shower was going strong. And the next thing I knew, it was 11:30, and these people had driven 100 miles to get to my house, and they didn't want to go home. I was trying to kick them out. And they asked me if I would do it again next year. And so I said, well, okay, sure. So that was 2014. The next year I did it again, and I started to feel like something's going on here. I had brought in a storyteller who told a story about a mortal man who married a fairy, and it was a very cute little story. But one of the people in my group is a walk-in soul. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with that, but a walk-in soul is, very rare, I would say. She stood up and she said at the end of the story about fairies, she said, Pan, who's the head of the fairies, told me that if we say his name 3 times, he'll appear. We're in my backyard. I'm thinking, okay. So we all said his name. We drew it out nice and long, Pan. And now I need to digress for a moment. This particular day was about 100 degrees. In Illinois, the humidity is commensurate with the temperature. And it was a miserable evening. There wasn't a breeze. There wasn't anything. And we all had said the word Pan 3 times. And I turned around and looked at this big bank of trees and I call it the wild space because you can't go back there. It's poison ivy, brambles, that sort of thing. And all the, every single plant in the wild space looked like it was just going to keel over. It was just so hot, except this one bush was shaking like it was in a hurricane. And there was no breeze. And I looked at my group and I said, am I the only one seeing this? And I looked at them and all of their jaws are hitting the floor. And I thought, okay, then I guess it happened, so I took that as a sign that I needed to pay closer attention to what I was doing here, that there was a bigger plan and I needed to stop goofing around and, see what it wanted to be.
Absolutely.
By the 4th year, now, mind you, this is all happening in my backyard. By the 4th year, I had decided that it would be networking for metaphysicians, because at that time, not so much now, but at that time, all of us were in competition with each other. You would hear people say things like, well, you can't charge that much. You're not that good. I was so tired of having to prove myself, having to climb to the top of the heap. And I thought there's got to be a better way. And why don't we all just cooperate? Why don't we work together? I felt like the metaphor that I used to the group when I explained this to them was, I said, the world is almost ready to see us. They're almost ready to acknowledge us and hear us and listen to us. And when they pull the curtain back, what do you want them to see? Do you want them to see us all in a knife fight over dollars? Or do you want them to see that we're working together for the betterment of the planet and humanity? And they thought, yeah, that's probably where we should be. And so it started out as networking. And that built my core group, truly. But at the same time, my husband said to me, this is a lot of work putting this thing on. I need you to move it someplace else. And so there was this really fancy B&B around the corner. And I thought, well, I'll go take the tour. I know I can't afford it, but I'll just do it, and just so I can start pushing the energy for this. And I walk in, and it is absolutely jaw-dropping, 5-star B&B in a town so small, there is no stoplight. And I'm taking the tour. I can't take it all in. There's so much. And I get to the last unit that the last of the rooms. I'm being led around by one of the employees, and one of the owners walks in, and she says to me, well, so what is this? Is like a family reunion, or, a birthday party, or, what is your goal here for, renting the entire building out? And I just looked her dead in the eye and I said, we're all psychic. Because I figured, she's going to find out anyway, and she'll probably kick us out. She looked me dead in the eye and said, I've been waiting for you. So I knew that I should make it work, even though it was a completely different platform than I had been working on, which was my backyard.
Wow.
Which is huge. But yes, that's when I started making it into something. I was getting speakers, started locally, Chicago people that, didn't maybe needed to bring some people that they knew, or, just needed to be a little bit better known. And it was all just growing. And it went from one afternoon to a full day to 4 full days. And then COVID hit. And I had already sold almost every ticket by the time they closed down Illinois in March. And I had to refund all the tickets. And it was, I didn't know what to do. And at the same time, this particular company called Sage Productions was teaching a class online on how to do an online conference, which now we're sick of them. But at the time, nobody had done it before. And so I took the class. It was 4 days, 12 hours each. Oof. And I immersed myself in it. I found a good AV guy, and I wound up putting on a 2-day conference online. People from 6 countries attended. It was even China. I was really amazed. And so we didn't miss a year. We didn't miss a year because of COVID. And it was I'm glad I did it, but I'll never do it again, because I like that interaction, and you really don't get that, and
agreed.
That's the whole thing is, that you meet these people, that you have conversations with them in crazy moments that you didn't know were available until it happened. And yeah, I'm glad I did it. I'd never do it again. Right. So the following year, to build up all the momentum again, I invited Grant Cameron to come and speak, be our keynote. And he said yes. I couldn't believe it.
Let me say, Grant Cameron, he's the NDE guy, right? Near-death experience guy.
Well, he started 45 years ago as an NDE guy. Then he became a UFO guy, and then he became the guy who is all about consciousness.
Okay.
And I wanted him to talk about consciousness and how it relates to all the other phenomenon that is uncategorizable, to a group of metaphysicians, so they would start to understand that it is all connected. 100%. And so he did a great job. Everybody was so thrilled to see him. We had a lot of people come that year. And so we're just building on it. My goal when I choose speakers is to find people that are just about ready to take off. You know, like their rocket is on the launch pad, and I want to get them before they take off.
Sounds
And
familiar. That's what we do on the podcast.
well, last year, Sarah Breskman Cosme was our keynote speaker, and she is everywhere. I don't think that girl ever goes home.
Yes.
She's all over the country, all over the world. She's just great, and everyone loved her.
She's the is she the remote viewer, or which one is she?
No. She does QHHT, so she's not
okay.
actually psychic,
Okay.
but she's a hypnotherapist.
Oh, hypnotherapist. Yeah, right. Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah.
But she does the hypnotherapy that Dolores Cannon developed,
Her
which
style. Yeah.
takes you to your higher self.
Yeah, I'm a master hypnotherapist. I know exactly what you're talking about. For the listeners, though, it is one that jumps you quickly into a highest level in theory. I mean, that's what everybody says, and the results kind of prove that out.
Well, yeah, she's written 2 books on just people. Her clients randomly are all from Egypt during one section, and then another book, all of her clients are suddenly from Atlantis, you know, and so it's really interesting read. Her books are very interesting. She's the sweetest person. I was looking for somebody last year who would speak about cryptids, because what the heck do cryptids have to do with metaphysics? Right. And I was just spinning through podcasts one day on YouTube, and I just stopped randomly, and it was a MUFON conference, and this guy named Steve walks up to the podium and says, "If you haven't read Where the Footprints End by Josh Cutchin, you don't belong in this room." And I thought, wow, that's a statement. So I played it back and I wrote it down and I ordered it. And one of the best books I've ever read. It's actually 2 books. Really, really amazing recounting of not just Bigfoot, where the footprints end, but of a lot of different cryptids and folklore. And wow, the guy is amazing. So I contacted him and he said yes, and you know, he was fantastic. My goal is always, like I said, to get these people just before they explode onto the scene and everybody knows their name, you know, and you can say, I saw them just before that happened.
Absolutely. I saw you had Mike Clellan on there too, the owl/UFO guy.
Yes, Mike Clellan is our keynote this year.
Okay.
And I think Mike is probably the best storyteller on the circuit, on the earth. I mean, if you watch his lectures, which it's kind of hard to find him nowadays, because he was off the circuit for a while, I wanted to bring him back. And turns out now suddenly he's speaking in many places. And his thing is that he has been having paranormal experiences his whole life, but they seem to be presaged by the presence of an owl. Mm-hmm. So when he sees an owl, he knows something's afoot. Right. And the things that happen to him are wild and crazy. And I just, and now FYI, we're not a UFO conference, but UFOs seem to tip in every so often, you know, and he has something to say about that. So we have him. We have Ingrid Honkala this year. She is a PhD NASA scientist who had her first NDE when she was 5 years old at her family's home in the mountains of Colombia, South America. And what a story she tells. And she is one of the sweetest people I've ever met. Everyone's going to want to take her home at the end. She's just sweetheart.
Fantastic. Yeah, my son's actually in Colombia right now as we speak.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, just got there yesterday.
So we're also having this year we're also having, now this is headline day that I'm talking about, which is Saturday, August 12th. Our third speaker is who I consider to be the best medium in the country. And she's from Racine, Wisconsin, and her name is Carolyn Clapper. She came last year and told us her origin story, which is just a phenomenal story. It took her 2 hours to tell it. It was just phenomenal. And now this year, she's going to come and talk about her work. So she does missing persons. She's a medical intuitive, and doctors actually listen to her. And she's, of course, an evidential medium. And she's just another sweetheart. And we're really excited to have her. So that's our headliner day. That's Saturday.
So for people, listeners, if you're interested in this, tickets are still on sale until July 7th, $375, correct?
Yes.
Thursday, August 10th through August 13th you can get all the particulars. Is there a website or someplace they can go to get this?
Yes. I'm all over Facebook, but also you can go to my website, internalwilderness.com. And there is a drop-down menu called Worldwide Metaphysical Tribe, and there's probably 11 pages under that. So
fantastic. And so as you've had these, various, I guess I'm going to call them conferences, because in reality, that's what it is. Seminars, conferences, whatever. I suppose you've seen people that have come and maybe been newbies or semi-newbies when they show up just to observe. And how have they progressed if they've been return seekers? I mean, how do they progress through the years?
Sometimes they come back and sometimes not. But one thing that I do offer that tends to bring people back is if you buy a ticket this year, then in October after the conference, I will offer you a ticket for $100 off. And it's called the Super VIP ticket. And those folks snap up all those tickets.
I bet they do.
Yeah.
So what is the layout of this thing? If people say, hey, I'm going to do this, I want to go sit there. And, they show up, and are they sitting outside, inside? Where are they at, and what are they doing?
So it's actually an outside conference, but we have, let me just roll back and say that on the website under, so internalwilderness.com, looking at the tab that says Worldwide Metaphysical Tribe, there is a video that I had made so that you could see what the whole conference looks like. And yes, we are outside. However, we're in a covered pergola. And though it also has, translucent walls. Okay. So that, but we've never had rain. I mean, last year we had rain 10 minutes before we closed for the night. So, I mean, it's just always been good weather. We also have a big 5-car garage area where the vendors and readers all hang. And so it's a corner lot. And you think, oh, well, what can you do with a corner lot? Holy moly, this is like the Garden of Eden. They have made it into the most magical place you've ever seen. So we're just thrilled that we get to be there every year.
So do you have a limit, I assume, on this small group with that kind of a setting?
Right. 100 people is the maximum amount of tickets I can sell.
Gotcha. Fantastic. So Tom, you got a question?
Yeah, I'd just like to go back a little bit to earlier in your story. You mentioned something about a walk-in soul. And for the readers, I have no idea what that is. Could you explain from your perspective what that is?
Sure. 40 something years ago, I read a book by Ruth Montgomery about walk-in souls. And I just put it back on the shelf after I read it. And I thought, I'll just leave it on the back burner. I have no idea if this is true or not. But what she describes is truly what this particular individual describes. Her name is Linda Wilkes. And her story is so compelling. But what happens in general with a walk-in soul is you've come to this earth, you've lived your life, and you're done. You did all your stuff, and but you have a perfectly good body, and it's got a lot of years ahead of it, and somebody else, some other soul could use it to complete their mission too. So generally speaking, the host, the original person who's going to leave, gets very, very ill. And during the peak of that illness, the exchange happens. The way Linda describes it, she says she felt the exchange, and this was in the 90s, by the way this happened. Still now in 2023, she says, I can still feel the spirit pushing into my body, getting its fingers with my fingers, getting its toes with my toes. And it's just thrilling, to think about it. And until I met Linda, it was all on the back burner, but she is so authentic, and she is so no BS, she's just amazing. So what happens is the exchange happens, and then the body begins to heal. And then the new person who is now inhabiting this body, and this happened to Linda, doesn't recognize their family, their friends. With Linda, she said that people were coming to her hospital room, and she would just feel their energy. And if they felt good and nurturing and loving and caring, they were in her circle again. And if she felt that something was off, she kept her distance. And it's just amazing. I mean, her daughter is a medium and didn't know it at the time. And
was this a daughter from the new body or from the old body?
Well, from the old Linda. Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Who was
exactly
coming to the hospital to see her. Yeah.
And I will say, you talked about Ruth Montgomery, and I had already jotted her name down because years and years and years ago, when I kind of first started the investigative process, she was one of the first people I read. And Tommy, she's a very well known, back in the 60s, 70s, and into the 80s, whatever, very well known reporter in Washington, D.C. doing politics. And she had a person come to her, from the other side, and she started doing automatic writing. And it was, I think, Lily, I believe that's right. Lily was the name. And but I think it was a guy. But anyway, long story short, she ended up in one of her books, and probably more than one. She talked about her experience with a walk-in. I think the first one was down in Mexico or something. She traveled, maybe it was South America, I can't remember. And she went down there. But I would recommend her books, because you mentioned her, and I will just say kudos to her. She's deceased at this point, but wow, that lady had some serious credibility, and she really struggled with should she even talk about this. So some of that initial road work that she did allows us to come out and talk about these things. So some of these early warriors, I call them, really set a standard for us of high quality stuff.
And you can probably get her books for $1 on Amazon. I mean, they're books from the 60s. So, but they're so worth reading.
Absolutely.
I thought she was a pioneer.
Fantastic. But yeah, walk-in souls are fascinating. I mean, I think a person could have that whole topic, obviously, for a speaker would be fascinating for people. Now, whether they believe it or not, that's totally their choice. That's what I always say. Take all the data you can to come to your own reasoned conclusion, and then go from there. And then, from an investigative point of view with Tom and our background, I mean, that's what we do. We got to be led down the primrose path with evidence, and then bingo, there you go. Okay. Eventually a 2x4 hits you in the head, goes, okay, there's something to this,
I'm the same way. I mean, I am very practical. Don't just hand me a plate full of woo, because I'm probably give it right back to you. I have a guy who wants to give a talk about ghosts, but I just don't have a thing for ghosts. I told him, he said, what's your problem with them? And I said, maybe if I saw one, I would think that there's something there, but what I see so far is a lot of nothing. So,
Yeah, everybody's got their topics, and certainly sometimes seeing is believing. And
right.
we've interviewed a number of, I'll call them ghost hunters for lack of better term, and some of fascinating stories and interactions and so forth. But I think the point for people coming to this is, if you're way out there woo woo, this may not be your bucket of stuff here to go do this sort of thing. I mean, you want to go with, go ahead.
I'm going to disagree
Or you
because,
think you think the woo woos need to be educated?
well, I think that, okay, for example, one of my speakers this year is Cheryl Costa. First of all, Cheryl Costa is a trans woman. There's a whole story there. She started out in the Navy for 20 years on a nuclear submarine when she was a boy, as she says it.
Okay.
Then she transitioned, became a Buddhist monk, and then a witch. And she and her wife have written 50 books on UFOs, one for each state, to tell you where the UFOs can be seen, okay, where they show up all the time. Okay, so here's a woman who's got so much going on. I wanted her to come and talk about Wicca this year, because she's coming and speaking on Friday. I wanted her to come and talk to us because we don't really know that much about witches, this group. And so what's cool about coming and having a whole weekend to hang with these speakers is they all have their woo edge too. And if you're that person and you're, caught up in phenomena and the whole woo-woo thing, you're going to find people that are going to totally get you. Everybody's in a different place on the path. So I don't judge anybody. I've been walking this path for a long time and I recognize some road markers,
Sure.
But on the other hand, everybody has to do their own exploration on their own. You can't educate people into knowing things when experience will trump that,
Absolutely. So from a personal perspective, do you feel like this conference and interaction has really grown you personally?
Oh, for sure. And it's not what you think. On the one hand, I struggle to find people on the cutting edge because I've been checking out the cutting edge for my whole life. And I struggle to find those people. What it has been teaching me over the years is, because I have this woo brain too, it really grounds me, because I have things like, oh, the caterer can't come at the last minute, and this bill is due and I forgot about it, and it just keeps me grounded in the moment, so that I just get better at it, because this is, I want you, when you come, I want you to have a seamless experience that you can choose. You can either, say, for example, go to your cabin and just hang, or you can come to my spoon bending class. I mean, I don't teach it. I have somebody else. So it's a lot packed into one weekend.
Sounds like it really is. So how many classes or presentations would be in a day on average?
2 or 3, depending. This year, I have 2 on Friday. My other speaker besides Cheryl Costa is Morgan Daimler. And the reason I asked Morgan to come is because she is a expert on Celtic fairies, and everybody thinks fairies are Tinkerbell, and they are not Tinkerbell. And so I think it's time for a little, education on that.
Right.
So she's going to come and talk about really fairies, pixies, brownies, all those things. And normally I would have a third speaker like after dinner, but this year I can't even really tell you what we're going to do, but we're taking a secret field trip, and it's a secret, so I can't tell you where we're going. But we are all taking off and checking something out. So
Nice.
something totally amazing. So,
Leave a little mystery there.
you know,
Nice. That sounds like fun. Tom, you got something?
It sounds like a hell of a weekend, especially for new people coming in and experience.
it's a massive weekend.
And
We
you're
should
still
do-
going to have the bonfire, right?
Well, we don't have a place to do a bonfire, and I'm not sure that this particular ordinances in this town will allow it, but we have a giant fireplace.
There you go.
And so we do, actually this year on Thursday night, I'm having a guy come in who is going to tell us bedtime stories of high strangeness. And it's going to be from 9 to 11 around the fire. We'll all be eating our deluxe s'mores. I get really good chocolate and and yeah, we're going to listen to some scary stories. And the reason I'm doing that is not to scare people, but so that they can begin to try and wrap their minds around what is the purpose of these cryptids. What's a rake about? What's the Wendigo about? Why is Dogman a thing? Why are we afraid of all this stuff? What does it have to do with the oneness principle? And so that's the reason that I'm bringing him, because I'm challenging people to fit it into their definition of the oneness principle.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've got a Bigfoot guy coming on the podcast here this season, and
Cool.
out of North Carolina, Ron Moorhead. And
Oh, yes,
you know Ron.
of course.
So, yep. So he'll be talking about, the cryptid situation and Bigfoot and so forth. And even the rake. Occasionally you hear stories about the rake, and I think that's almost the boogeyman in a lot of people's dreams, what a rake looks like,
For sure.
And
For sure.
So pretty fascinating, and probably not as
Well,
scary.
Ron Moorhead brought us the Sierra Sounds. I mean,
Yes,
that was groundbreaking tape.
what he's known for. Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, yeah, I think the cryptids certainly an area that is continuing to be investigated. And in the law enforcement world or criminal justice world, both civil and criminal, we have to prove things in civil court by a preponderance of the evidence, which just means 51% in your mind that's
Right.
correct, which is a lower threshold. And then if somebody's going to be convicted of a crime, it's beyond a reasonable doubt, which is like above 90 percentile that this is what happened. You don't have to have 100%, although people would like that. But I think we've certainly got beyond the preponderance of an evidence in most of these cryptid cases, the ones that have been investigated for a long time. And I think that should give people a reasonable pause to say, maybe I should look at this, because the preponderance of evidence is certainly there. Beyond a reasonable doubt, that's, still out there probably. We're moving towards that pretty fast. And some people are probably already there in their minds, but I really feel when you have forums like what you have and what we propose to have here, I think really that's people need to tune in and then do the research themselves. And like we say with so many of these metaphysical topics, people need to do the research themselves. Listen to what people have to say. Go dig into the books, dig into the podcast, dig into everything you can, and then come to your own conclusions. It's your best way to get to it, in my opinion.
Absolutely. I mean, again, experience trumps everything. And I've seen a couple of UFOs in my lifetime, but they were little tiny dots against the firmament. It wasn't as if something landed in my yard, And so my experience is pretty nascent. And I'm not sure I want to have more of an experience than that. So reading is a great way to fill in those blanks.
We're having Betty and Barney Hill's niece on the
Oh,
show.
Marston, yes.
Yes, absolutely. And so I think she'll be on this season, and you just, 6 books in the area, and just fascinating information. And once something like that happens in your family, I think you're kind of stuck with the UFO gig for a lifetime, it seems. And, which is okay. But you're talking about people landing. I've interviewed an individual who did have a craft land in the backyard. But sometimes you get into things with the UFOs with astral travel. You're actually coming out of body and astrally traveling. So I think people have to have a lot of really pretty in-depth understanding of a lot of metaphysical topics that kind of blend together when we get some of this. So you have to have a wider range than just the standard physical body, getting up and walking into a craft. It's really probably your astral body in a lot of cases, and sometimes it's physical. But I really think those things need to be really looked at from a deeper perspective. And science being how science is, you really got to kind of really prove it beyond any doubt before anybody's going to accept it. But we're learning about consciousness now at a level that people previously did not understand.
Very much so.
Where light and the consciousness and photons and so forth being, anywhere and everywhere all at the same time. We're all one. I mean, these kinds of things, being able to hook up, they used to put stickers on your heads to, check your brain and so forth. Now you can actually put them on the outside and find out, you even get clearer results and better results. So things are coming from outside. The cranium and consciousness is not generated by the brain. It's, outside of that. And there's so many things like that we could go into and talk. And so my hat's off to you for having a conference like this. I know, having hosted a few things like this, many things like this through the years, it is challenging, and it does take some effort and time, but I think it's, based out of love of curiosity, love of the topic matter that you're into, and love of people, that they get an opportunity to advance themselves. So my hat's off to you for doing this.
Well, thanks. I can't tell you how much I enjoy it.
I totally get it, 100%. And if each of us can do our little part, a lot of people will really start to advance. And in the greater metaphysical world, they talk about the advancement of consciousness across the earth. Clearly, that's happening because between spiritual understandings, people's abilities, and then science all blended together, we are advancing forthwith into the next arena of time and space. And we'll look back on this time as a real frontier of that change one day. And I
agree.
To that. So, Tommy, you got any closing comments as we go through this?
No, I want to just thank you for taking on the topic and the challenge of doing this and maintaining the integrity of it.
Thank you.
You said earlier it can go sideways a little bit into a different place, and sounds like so far everything's tracking where it should be, and people are getting what they need. And obviously they're coming back for more. So that's a great thing.
Very much so. Thank you.
Well, Deb, do you want to leave anybody with more data about your upcoming conference and how they can get a hold of you? Do you want to recap?
Sure, absolutely. Absolutely. Again, my website is internalwilderness.com, and you can find the Worldwide Metaphysical Tribe and 11 or so sub pages under that with all the information you're going to need. But also on my website is my phone number, is my email, which is deb@internalwilderness.com. So easy enough. I love it when you write to me because then I can really explain things. People do get confused sometimes about, there's a lot of information on that website. And so my job is to find out what your needs are and then show you how we fix that. So
fantastic. Well, great. I really enjoyed this chat and hearing about how you developed this, because people always wonder how these things come to be, and so you gave the backstory, and that's really, really cool. And I think people really, really enjoy that. So I hope you fill that up. I bet you do. And that'd be a good road trip for us, Tom.
There
Yeah.
you go.
Set up a podcast, interview a few people while we're there. That'd be fun.
You
Anyway,
would love it. I have a place for you to set up.
hey, there you go. That sounds like fun. Not a big road trip for me, but it would be for you, Tommy.
That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, anyway, very good. So from all of us here at the Metaphysical Mysteries podcast, I want to thank Deb for being here, Tommy, and we'll see you all very soon and talk to you then.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Deb.